This is Plug Unplug. I'm MTK. One of the best assessments of the Reagan era, which reads prescient now in the wake of the Reagan doctrine, and it captures Reagan, the man, the position, and the way the manipulated puppet in the place. I think is Ronald Reagan: An Autopsy by Murray and Rothbard, and you can find that on the net. It was written in March of 1989, long before Reagan died in 2004. But it chillingly predicted that the digital age would, if it could, mummify a carefully crafted public perception of the 40th president and reproduce it well into the future. Quote, in this high-tech age, I'm sure his mere physical death could easily have been overcome by his handlers and media mavens. Ronald Reagan will be suitably mummified, trotted out in front of a giant American flag, and some puppet master would have gotten him to give his winsome head shake, and some ventriloquist would have imitated the golden tones. Well, why not? After all, the living reality of the last 4 years has not been a hell of a lot different. Rothbard and the prescience here but we began talking about technology, consumer technology, on the cusp of elevating us with the internet, was in those days represented in its farthest reach by television. That was the point to be made here. And that medium was manipulated on the most epic scale by Ronald Reagan. In those days, to be broadcast all over the world, in those days, on U.S. television, was as close to global communication in real time as had ever existed, ever. This is what we're doing now is some 20 years, 37 years, 40 years down the road. But the closest way you could do that was through U.S. television's projection. And on the evening of my 16th birthday, this actor-president went on television and told everybody it was imperative to invest our tax dollars in a strategic defense initiative to protect us from nuclear war, and described this like crazy, insane thing, which was scientifically impossible, and called it Star Wars technology. Evil Empire, Star Wars technology. And, in the vernacular of a pop movie phenomenon. This has never happened. Now we're talking about Trump, but this had never happened from the presidency. And anybody with any brains, it was shocking. Every legitimate scientist in the world knew SDI was a ploy of language, a technical and political impossibility to deliver. And it was later revealed that Reagan's own speechwriters had advised against him including that. And he'd made the decision on his own that day to include it. So it ends up working in the same way that Trump ends up working, because people can't think through or won't think through. A naive public, wowed by Reagan, Star Wars, computers, technology in general, and without the internet nowadays that we have to look things up or to be able to react or produce things that anyone can read, they just ate it up. Conservatives have used the phrase to justify defense spending now for offensive weapons, well, even without 9/11. Reagan used his charisma on the small screen to push private and even illegal agendas until the veneer finally broke in the Iran-Contra hearings. But even then, his I can't remember and his pitch-perfect delivery got him off the hook. Years later, and I'll end this part with this, I interviewed Dr. Cornel West, and I asked him, I said, how could it have come to that? And Dr. West said, quote, in some ways, it's like after the Congress of Vienna in 1815, where you had thick waves of counter-revolution, thick waves of conservative politics, and the emergence of reactionary elites and nation-states. And since the 1980s, we've had thick waves of conservatism, thick waves of reactionary elites. Thatcher, Reagan, you can go right across the board. And, when we're talking here, you can include Berlusconi, and then hence Bloomberg. I don't know how he's not the same, but you know what I mean. Among the elites. Even Obama, I'm interrupting Dr. West's quote here, but since the 80s, we've had thick waves of conservatism, thick waves of reactionary elites, Thatcher, Reagan. We're dealing right now with an ice age. And by ice age, I mean deeply conservative and reactionary elites shaping the world in their own image.